there's things that we want to follow up on after the fact, we can do that. Yeah, and Jens, one thing before I dive in, because you're not on the demo project that I plan to use, can you quickly tell me the email address you're using on SRDR Plus? Jens, can you? Yep, I can hear you. All right. I've added you to the project, so it should show up in your list. So maybe, Jens, if you can share that agenda on your screen, which I have on my screen, but I can't share my screen, so people can see what our plan for the session is. I just emailed it, an updated version of it to Tracy about an hour ago. Yeah, so sorry everybody for all the trouble so far. Hopefully the rest of this will go smoothly. So just, I thought we'd start by quick introductions from our team at least, and maybe hear a little bit about your team. So Art, who's on the call, I think so far is Jens, Yap, and Birol Centurk. So they are our lead programmer and assistant programmer for SRDR. I'm Ian Saldana, so I'm the director of the project, and we're all with the Brown Evidence-Based Practice Center here in Providence. Is there anyone else who's on our team who's joined? Okay, but maybe folks might show up later. So Tracy, and I know there's quite a few people on the call, so I'll leave it to you as to how you want to handle introductions.
Yeah, we have quite a number of folks here. It's mostly our whole EPC. We have several investigators, Elizabeth, Carey, and others. And then the majority of the folks on the phone today, or on the call today, are research associates who likely will be the people on the ground doing some of this uploading. So that's why we're all here today. And we've done Erin, who's with us, did pilot a couple times for a couple of our projects and ran into some questions that we did send to you ahead of time. So Erin might be speaking up as we go through. One question I had for you, Ian, was did you want us to try to ask questions as you guys are going along, or do you want us to wait until you're kind of through that section before?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. I think it would be helpful if, I think because we have such a long agenda, and I want to make sure, I definitely want to make sure we cover point number C here, which is all your questions. But even in point number B, where we talk a little bit about the demo of SRDR, feel free to interrupt me. But so the plan was to do introductions for about 3-4 minutes and then do that demo. So do feel free to interrupt us if something's not clear. But clearly it's going to be a very quick demo. We won't go in depth. But do let us know if anything does come up. But what you'll see if Jens scrolls down a little bit is we'll then go into the questions that you've asked about importing data from Distiller. We'll then do a quick demo about an importer we are developing for importing data from Microsoft Excel. And then, as you see at the end, we've also saved some open time for questions about it, questions you might have. But do feel free to interrupt as we go along as well.
Okay,
does that sound good?
Yeah, that works. Thank you so much.
Is there anything else we should touch base on, Tracy, before we dive in?
No, I think we'd love to hear from you.
Okay, great. So, as I said, so this is not meant to be an in-depth demo of SRDR and all of its features, but I think Tracy was mentioning not many of the team are that familiar with SRDR Plus. So what I'm hoping to do is provide a really quick overview about what the system is and what features are available, and then dive into the questions that you've asked. So Jens, if you refresh your page, I think you should be able to see the project that the breast reconstruction. Oh, it's there already. Sorry, I missed it. So before he clicks in there, so this is sort of once you log into SRDR Plus, this is what you will see on the quote unquote landing page inside, or the home page, I guess, inside your account. you'll see a bunch of options up top that navigate to different other locations on the website. And then what the main piece of what you're looking at are the various projects that you have, or in this case, Jens has. So you see the various projects. The one you see, this is, I guess, the dashboard, what we call. You can create a new project in that option in the top right, and you can sort information by when this was last created or when it was last updated. So within the breast reconstruction after mastectomy project, which is the example I'll be using for this quick demo, that's one of our ongoing EPC projects that I'm the lead on. So we have, as you can see here, we were 7 members, but I just added Jens to facilitate this demo. It tells you how many key questions are in the review. It tells you how many citations have been included in the project so far. So these are citations that are for data extraction. So we, in this project, we have a separate platform in which we use for screening. We use Abstracker for screening. So I know from Tracy that you all do screening in Distiller, for example. So therefore, these citations are already pruned down to the ones that we will be using for data extraction. As you can see, we've done 53 of the data extraction so far. Later on, I'll talk a little bit about the SR360, which is another platform that I actually was discussing at the June EPC meeting, annual meeting at the HRQ program. But I'll get into that if we have time a little later. Below this, you see options such as edit the project, build extraction form, export project data, and then, God forbid, delete the project. So if you click on edit the project here, Jens, so this takes you to so that was a bit about the interface and dashboard, about the overall what it looks like. Then when you dive into editing the project, you start to find information about the project itself. So what you can see here, you can see project information such as the name, the topic in terms of, I guess, what broad topics the review is addressing, attribution, so such as who's doing it, then authors of the report. And this, I think, is related to one of the questions you asked, as to where do you put information related to who wrote the report, not the users in the project in terms of who's extracting data, but who wrote the report or who authored the report. So this is where you would put that information. So because the report is not out yet, we don't really know yet who our author list is. So we've left that as TBD for now. If you scroll down a little more, you have information about whether it's what the methods of the review were, whether it was a systematic review, we can have a rapid review, and there are other options as well. The registration number, and then a DOI, because there's not one available yet, because this is not public yet. Funding source as well at the bottom. So if Jens scrolls up a little back to the top of this page, you'll see other tabs available on this page, such as key questions. So this is where we input. So if you click on key question, you'll see information about the 6 key questions in this review. So these are abbreviated a little bit just to facilitate our use. So of course, the full language of the key question is much bigger, but here's how we've listed them here. And then on the third tab there, and you can see here, you can add new questions as well at the bottom. So on the third tab there, there's members and roles. You see on the project, there's multiple members, mostly like data extractors and maybe the project lead and a couple of research assistants, et cetera, et cetera. Each one of these has an option. You can change their roles between what's known as the leader, consolidator. This is someone who you might choose to only allow privileges to consolidate data extractions. So let's say there's 2 copies of a given study that are extracted. They might be able to only compare those 2 study copies and make a third version that's the final version.
Ian, can I just interrupt for a second? This is Elizabeth. Yes. I just wanted to make sure I understand. So our primary use of SRDR is just uploading, right, information. Do we need to use this part of SRDR if?
No, so in theory, I guess you don't even need to add more users, because whoever's creating and uploading the data for the project, they can be the only user, and you can make the project. We can talk about the next steps of making the project publicly available. This is if you're using the.
Okay, so if we're just uploading, do we even have to do those other steps you talked about entering the key questions and that kind of stuff? I
would suggest you please enter the key questions, because that's how we provide information about what's in the project itself, such as key questions, who the funder was, what the title of the project was, and so on. This is for who's using the system for data extraction. So I wouldn't bother with this, but I would put information about the authors, et cetera, of the report on the previous tab.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
So the leader and consolidator quick roles that I talked about here. There's other roles such as contributor and auditor, but I guess since you're not using it as much, I won't spend as much time explaining these actually. But there is different roles that your team members, when you're extracting data, can play on the project. And you can remove users, change their roles, and so on. So I think that's it for this page. This is the project information, I guess, section of the platform. So I'm assuming there's no other questions that come up that are at this point. The next, I guess, phase that if you were using the platform is you would be building your data extraction form. So if you click on build data extraction form there, it takes you to the sort of extraction form builder, which is on a subsequent page. And this build the extraction form, as the name suggests, is really going to be used by the lead of the project when they are developing the data extraction form before the extractors come in and extract data. So this build-up page looks a little different from what the extractors will see. So it's a little more, I guess, in development in terms of, not in development, but it's a little more, you see the gears running at the inside of the system as you're developing this. The way this is designed is that on the left, you have the various tabs that make up the extraction form, such as design details. I mean, y'all are all experts on this stuff, so I don't really need to explain what each of these things are, but we'll walk through them a little bit. But there's design details, arms, sample characteristics, outcomes, risk of bias, results, and so on. So what I do want to spend a little bit of time talking about is the various types of questions that are available. So if Jens goes back to the design tab, or the design details tab, the system allows, so if you, this looks a little unusual and a little sort of spread out, and that's because as you saw, there were 6 key questions for the project. One of the things the system allows you to do is that, let's say you have certain questions in your data extraction form that you only want answered for key questions 1 and 2. And not all key questions 1, 2, and all the way 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The system allows you to do that. So when you set up this form, the way we've set it up for this project, we've chosen for the most part to not use that feature. So you can see for each of these questions, you'll see key questions 1 through 6 sort of repeated across the board. But the system allows you that feature. The question types, so if you click on, maybe Jens, let's create a question at the bottom rather than, because this is an active project, I don't want to mess with any of the questions. So let's create a new question here, and then we'll delete it. Let's put whatever, what day is it or something. So add question. So it takes you to, again, this is the builder's view. So the person who's creating the data extraction form, it asks you which key questions you want to associate this particular question with. What that means is that when the data extractor is extracting a study for a given key question, do you want this question to show up or not? So let's say here Jens has decided that this question applies only to key questions 2 and 4. You can put a set of extraction instructions for your extractors, and then your question structure is, please be specific, that sounds good. Great. So if you click on, I just wanted to show field types. So the options that the system allows are text field, numeric field, checkboxes, drop downs, radio buttons, where only one can be selected, select one with a write-in option. So another way of calling that is sort of other specify, or you can select multiple with write-in options. So those are the sorts of structure, I mean, the types of question that the system allows. The other thing you see here is you can specify whether the minimum and maximum character length allowed The default is 0 and 255, but those can be modified. If it was a numeric field, you can change that to minimum value, maximum value. So let's say you want the field is about percentage. So clearly the percent cannot go over 100. So you would probably in that scenario put a maximum value of 100. So it allows you to sort of in some ways control what's being extracted. Oops. So the other thing that is you'll see here before I move on out of this is that you'll see add row and add column. So that allows you to create a sort of a matrix